the Queen's bold choice. In the year 1570, England was a land of mist and secrets. Queen Elizabeth sat in her palace, watching the fog roll over the Thames. She was a ruler who wanted her people to be united, but the world was divided. She knew that being a leader meant making hard choices, even if those choices made powerful people far away very angry. Her youngest page, a bright-eyed boy named Pippin, hurried into the room. He carried a silver tray with a steaming mug of spiced cider. Pippin noticed the Queen's serious face and tried to cheer her up by balancing the tray on just one finger. Elizabeth couldn't help but smile at his clumsiness, her jewelry sparkling in the candlelight. Thousands of miles away in Rome, the sun was shining on the marble halls of the Vatican. Pope Pius lived there, surrounded by ancient books and quiet whispers. He was a man who followed old traditions very strictly. He was unhappy because Elizabeth was leading her church in a different way, and he decided it was time to send her a very serious message. Pius called for his swiftest messenger, a brave woman named Vora. He handed her a scroll, tied with a heavy red silk ribbon and sealed with wax. "Take this to England," he commanded. Vora knew this message would change history. She tucked the scroll safely into her leather satchel and prepared for a long journey across the sea. Vora's journey was not easy. She traveled through dark forests and over snowy mountains. When she reached the coast, the sea was wild and angry. She stood on the deck of a wooden ship, the salty spray hitting her face, holding the satchel tight. She was determined to deliver the Pope's decree, no matter how big the waves became. Back in London, Elizabeth and Pippin were in the Royal Library. They were looking at a giant map of the world. Elizabeth pointed to the small island of England. "We must be strong, Pippin," she whispered. "Even when the rest of the world tells us we are wrong, we must do what we think is best for our home." One rainy afternoon, Vora finally arrived at the palace gates. She was tired, and her cloak was covered in dust from the road. She held the scroll high for the guards to see. The red seal of the Pope shone even in the gray light. The news of her arrival spread through the palace like wildfire. The messenger from Rome had come at last. Elizabeth received Vora in the Great Hall. The room was silent as Vora walked across the polished floor. She knelt before the Queen and offered the scroll. Elizabeth took it with steady hands. She knew this letter meant she was being excommunicated, cast out from the old church. It was a moment that would define her reign forever. Elizabeth unrolled the parchment and read the Latin words. The message said she was no longer recognized by the Pope. A heavy silence filled the room. Pippin watched from the corner, worried for his queen, but Elizabeth didn't cry or hide. She stood even taller, her eyes flashing with a spark of independence. Later that evening, Elizabeth walked with Pippin in the palace garden. The storm had passed, and the first stars were appearing. "Does this mean we are alone?" Pippin asked softly. Elizabeth shook her head and placed a hand on his shoulder. "No, Pippin. It means we are free to find our own way." Together, they walked into the night, ready for whatever the future held.